Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's session, Societal Implications of Responsible and Beneficial AI. My name is Debbie Hosley, and I'm the Chief Mission Advancement Officer here at Lutheran Services in America. This webinar is part of the Lutheran Services in America Strength and Service series, which is laser focused on examining and tackling the unintended consequences and uncertainties in today's climate, all with the goal of helping move your organization forward. I am pleased to introduce our speaker for today's webinar, Nathan Chappell. Nathan is the Senior Vice President of Donor Search AI, a company founded to revolutionize how nonprofits connect with donors by providing premier donor intelligence and innovative fundraising. As a thought leader, public speaker, inventor, and award-winning author, Nathan is one of the world's foremost experts on the intersection between artificial intelligence and philanthropy. As a volunteer effort, Nathan founded Fundraising AI as a global collaboration with a focus on data ethics, data equality, privacy, and security. He is also co-author of the award-winning book, The Generosity Crises, The Case for Radical Connection to Solve Humanity's Greatest Challenges. Nathan is a sought-after speaker, and we're very grateful he's choosing to be here with us on this Tuesday. During today's webinar, Nathan will outline the critical role of AI in shaping the future of nonprofit fundraising and societal well-being. We'll have plenty of time for questions, so please feel free to enter your questions into the chat as we go along. So without further ado, friends, please help me welcome Nathan Chappell.
Great. Well, thank you, Debbie. It's such a pleasure to be here. I've done a few things now with Lutheran Services and just thoroughly enjoyed the people and community that you've built. So it's just great to extend and expand that community today and talk about something that I'm really passionate about. Just by way of background, I spent 20 years in the nonprofit sector as a fundraiser and a fundraising leader in human services, healthcare, and higher education. I really kind of a technologist by background, where I've always had this, inherent kind of desire to see how technology can amplify and extend our work. And back in 2017, I became a little bit dismayed with the lack of innovation in the nonprofit sector, and I ended up pioneering the first algorithm to predict gratitude, and it was called gratitude prediction and machine learning, and it was patented. And the rest is kind of history. I spent the last number of years really focusing on this area of AI and the intersection of philanthropy, and now get to do a lot of really fun things, both with donor search and the clients that we serve, and also with fundraising AI, which is a grassroots effort. And I'll share a little bit more about that with you along the way. So I will share my screen and we will go through a slide deck, which I think is in large part an opportunity to level set and really understand the broader context of how AI and philanthropy go together. In fact, it was in 2017, I did a TEDx talk called AI and the Future of Generosity. And back then, most people looked at me like I had three heads. And, what would possibly AI and generosity have to do with one another? We now know, unless you're not watching any television or on any social media or ever ordered anything on Amazon, that AI is really changing and has changed the way that societies operate, how businesses operate, and ultimately and hopefully how nonprofits will amplify and support their mission. So just real quick, if I get a thumbs up from someone that you can see my screen before I ramble for half an hour, and then, okay, good. I've seen lots of confused faces before, so I try to avoid at least a few today. We'll go through for about 30 minutes to maybe 30 to 35 minutes of a presentation talking about this kind of big topic of the societal implications of responsible and beneficial AI. It sounds a bit daunting. It's really not. It's something that I think should be near and dear to the nonprofit sector as we operate in the currency of trust. We have to think about not just short-term application, but long-term implications of things that we do. And then we'll pause and have a little bit of time for some Q&A, and it can be ask me anything. So anything that's, popping up in your head, I probably heard all the questions. I've done lots of these presentations, but feel free to try to stump me. And if I don't know the answer, I'll ask ChatGPT for the answer, and then we'll go from there. So, just to give a little bit of context of why we're talking about AI, and it's not just this nice thing to have. It's not because, our sector has a fear of missing out. It's not just because others are doing it so that we should do it. There are significant headwinds facing the charitable giving sector. Enough so much that I wrote a book about it out of, frankly, 2.5 years ago, just out of concern that nonprofit leaders were not aware of the changing nature and the forces moving against charitable giving, that people are expressing generosity in very different ways. But in fact, less and less people every year are giving to charitable organizations. As Debbie mentioned at the end of my presentation, I have a QR code. So that is your carrot to stay until the end. There will be a QR code where you can download a free copy of the PDF of the Generosity Crisis, which I hope really helps you understand the landscape of what's changing, but also how AI, even though it's not a book about AI specifically, talks about how AI can exacerbate that generosity crisis, but how it also is the only scalable solution to helping reverse it. Since 2017 till today, I spent a lot of my time trying to convince people that AI was real. It was not a fad. It was going to, change the way that we would operate, even in the nonprofit sector. And for quite a few years, I was really concerned with this idea that trying to convince people to use AI. I have come to the conclusion over the last year and a half, especially with the advances in generative AI, so tools like Microsoft Copilot and OpenAI and Google Gemini. Those are tools that are very accessible and affordable right now, and I'll go into those a little bit more later. That AI, it's not enough to just think about whether or not AI is going to be used. It will be used. And for organizations that use it, they will outpace organizations that do not. And for individuals that use it, will outpace individuals that do not. The rules of business has fundamentally changed. So it's not enough to think about, whether or not AI is going to happen. It is a given. It is not a fad. It is not going away. And if you're one of those people holding out, hoping that it was going away, I'm sorry to disappoint you. It's here to stay. And frankly, in the AI world, you haven't seen anything yet. The advances in this technology are very profound and very quick. But how we use it is not a given. So whether or not we're going to use it is a given. How we use it is not. Our sector operates in the currency of trust. Therefore, we need to ensure that we, again, are not just using technology because we have FOMO, and not just because it's a new thing or not just because it's a fad, but it's because it will support our missions in impactful ways. And like I said before, while AI is in part cause to some of the generosity crisis, not in total, you have got to read the book to understand that. And fair warning, the first 100 pages can be a bit daunting. I think Debbie and Alicia can tell you that. Have a box of cookies with you. But when you get past that, recognizing that it's all about people and relationships and community, but irresponsible AI practices will absolutely do tremendous harm to our sector. But AI is also the only scalable solution to reversing that generosity crisis. If the technology is pointed to build, protect, and promote trust, if it is used to foster connection, it can be very supportive. And in this case, you don't actually have to wait till the end of the session for the QR code. I put it right here for you. There'll be another slide at the end with the QR code again. But you'll learn how that AI can absolutely be used as a force for good, but gone unchecked, it actually could have some serious negative implications, which we'll talk about. So the reality is, and often I'm asked to think about the next 3 to 5 years, and Citibank Global does a very big global philanthropic study and asked me to think about the next 3 to 5 years in fundraising. And what is the lever that has the most amount of application of change? And the trick with this is that they needed me to write this in 200 words or less, which is, if they gave me 3 pages, I would have been, I could give all the disclosures and kind of hedge my bets. But in 200 words, it really forced me for a few weeks to think about, like, what is the definable thing that will absolutely make or break the sector in the next 3 to 5 years? And there's really no doubt in my mind, being at the forefront of being a fundraiser for 20 years and being the forefront of this technology, that AI will absolutely be that force that will change the nature of charitable giving. But how we use it and whether we adopt it and whether we adopt it in a both responsible and beneficial way will determine the outcome of the 3 to 5 years past that. So this is, when we use the term lightly, an inflection point that our sector is now caused to ask, or is called to ask questions that we haven't had to ask in the past, like, are humans essential in the future of fundraising? Those are questions that we have to ask now. What is the difference between asking someone for a gift and manipulating someone to give? Because AI would not know the difference between asking someone for a gift and manipulating someone to give. So large philosophical, esoteric questions that we are going to be called to hit pause on and ask the questions while using this technology in a responsible and beneficial way is going to be key to our sector's vibrancy in the next 3 to 5 years, and definitely beyond that. I highlight responsible and beneficial here for a specific reason. Responsible AI framework is something that you'll hear a lot. The abbreviation is RAI. Amazon and Microsoft and Google and OpenAI all have responsible AI doctrine, responsible AI frameworks that they say that drive their measures toward ensuring that AI does good instead of harm. Responsible AI is built on an ethical framework, and it prioritizes privacy and security. But all of that is to be shown in the short term. So to be evaluated in the short term, is it ethical? Is it private? Is it secure today? With no or little disregard for the future. And the reason why beneficial is a bit different. So while the private sector can focus on the short term, and because the stock market rewards things in the short term, they will always, prioritize things that happen in the short term. In fact, OpenAI, who builds ChatGPT, they spend, for every dollar they spend on safety, they spend $1,000 on scale. So we're talking a disproportionate amount of money spent on something that is driving their short-term revenue. The nonprofit sector has to look beyond, because all nonprofits are essentially connected. Like, all we know, all trees are connected underground through their roots, and they can actually support each other when one is in harm's way. If one struggles, they struggle. The same is true in the nonprofit sector. If one nonprofit, especially a notable nonprofit, does something very irresponsibly with AI, all nonprofits will feel the effect of it. And so we're connected in that way. So that means that we also have a higher role and a higher responsibility to ensure that we do this well. Beneficial means that it's not only supporting our mission, so maybe it's helping you raise more money or helping you support your donor experience in the short term, but it also is minimizing any potential unintended consequences or long-term harm. So the easiest way to think about this would be our encounter with AI through social media. When social media was created, by all accounts, it was not really ever anticipated that it was unethical, that it would have negative consequences, that essentially the essence of social media was to bring people together, that people with different walks of life, no matter where you lived, could essentially unite and get to know each other and support each other. But fast forward 10 years, 15 years, really from the time where we've started using social media to where it's been ingrained in our everyday life, that social media, in fact, has had tremendous unintended consequences that have not been beneficial to humanity. And there's still some good with it, don't disregard that. But we have increases in anxiety, systemic increases in anxiety, systemic increases in anxiety, depression, decreases in happiness, uniformly decreases in trust. And so these are unintended consequences of a technology that was driven for short-term revenue, for short-term responses. So we have this advantage now, being on this side of social media, to say, look, that was intended to be good, but it had these unintended consequences. That gives us really great clarity to think about AI and hit pause, perhaps, and say, let's use this technology, but let's also ensure that we're not just using it in the short term and being blinded to things that may happen in the future. So I hope that makes sense. And the nonprofit sector, again, has this higher level and this role and responsibility to use this technology in both ways. This is a very determinate fact that the nonprofit sector is the only sector that it really burdens itself with the future of humanity. And therefore, we have an opportunity to lead technology. We have an opportunity to lead in this space worldwide and to be that voice of reason to say, we don't have those same incentives that Microsoft and Google and Amazon have to their shareholders. And because we don't have those same financial incentives, it frees us to worry about those things in the future and to make sure that we use this in a strategic and measured way. So I know that sounds doom and gloom a little bit. I'll share some positives here. Nonprofits, especially not small nonprofits, we're seeing amazing innovation coming from the nonprofit sector at large, but especially small nonprofits where resources are constrained, where the need for innovation is greater. We're seeing like incredible use cases of AI to amplify mission, to help a nonprofit level up in ways that they could have never done this before. So things like predicting donor behavior, that's an area that I've been focused on, and Donor Search has been focused on since the very beginning, 2017. Content creation and editing, really popular. Grant writing and grant review, DXO, so the donor experience. So looking at how do we use AI to personalize that donor experience. Prospect research, so taking lots of data and summarizing it for us so that we don't have information overload. We can do, we can understand kind of the context of data so much more precisely now. Role playing and coaching. Before this call, we were just talking about a friend of mine, Mallory Erickson, and you should listen to her podcast called What the Fundraising. She's a fundraiser that has created this bot where you can do role playing with a bot before you go and make an ask. And it's a great use case and a safe space to be of like, okay, what if a person asks me these questions or these questions, and have AI take that place? It's a really great use of it. Communications, persona development. So if you do a survey within your organization, it's really hard when you have your basic survey responses to understand the overall sentiment of what was being said. Were people happy, or were they unhappy, or what were their biggest concerns? Generative AI is really good at understanding the personas of individuals through that. And the last is, I think, probably the most underutilized for now, but it won't be in the future, is the ability to do data analysis and sentiment analysis. So taking large spreadsheets of data, and as any human, it's very easy to like just get glazed over and be like, I don't know, it's just too much information. But being able to use AI to distill that information to give you the 2 or 3 points that you need to know from that information, and be able to interrogate that data and say, what if this, or what if that, or what if I did this differently? What would those projected outcomes maybe look like? So these are just a few, and probably the most common ways that AI is being used in the nonprofit sector. So inevitably, I'm getting questions like, well, how are nonprofits using it? It's about the limit is your own creativity, to be honest. There are so many incredible use cases right now that if you unlock this AI mindset in your brain, and you really get curious, and you create a curiosity mindset for yourself and also within the culture of your organization, you can do amazing things. At the same time, we know that this balance between utility, so using something, sometimes is contradictory to humanity. And so this is a quote that comes from Mustafa Solomon, who he used to work at Google, but now he works at Microsoft because that's how the AI world is. But he has a new book that came out called The Coming Wave. It came out last year. And he said, this is going to be the most productive decade in the history of our species, but we need to learn how and when to say no collectively. That's a very hard thing to do, because when we balance utility and the ease of use, because we like to order something on Amazon with one click and have it almost read my mind of what I might buy, to know that there's a trade for, say, the local stores that are no longer around in our neighborhoods, that we've just kind of taken for granted that they're no longer there because Amazon and big box stores are around. There's a trade between utility and humanity that we have to really be conscious of, and not just go along and let AI take us over, but to make sure that we're remaining in charge and maintaining that we're prioritizing humanity. It's not a balance between utility and humanity. It's that we're prioritizing humanity over utility every time. That humanity has to remain in front and center. So just a couple of things to think about. The AI arms race, which is really how the stock market rewards AI companies, will always be focused on bigger and better, not safer. So the same way that if you buy a safe car like a Volvo, it doesn't mean that I can drive it unsafely and still be safe. It's still my responsibility to ensure. So just because Microsoft and Amazon, Google, and I'm not speaking ill of them, they're great companies that have amazing products, but their financial motivations are rewarded, evaluated and rewarded always based on scale over safety. That means that we as a sector have to be conscious of that and make sure that we are prioritizing safety over scale. We aren't selling cars or cell phones or tennis shoes. We are exchanging money for trust. And because of that currency of trust, we have to maintain that we're doing this in a way that does not diminish trust. And I shared this before. If we get into a time where we are now, which we have to call the question, are humans essential in the future of fundraising? Because I could create a bot today that looks like Kim on this call and talks like Kim on this call and says, "Hi, I'm a fundraiser and I would like to ask you for money." And if that bot version of Kim was programmed to say, extract a gift from this individual, and that's what a reward is, that bot, Kim's bot, would take the most expedient path of doing that. And there's a subtle difference between Kim's bot asking someone for money and manipulating someone to give, because Kim's bot will have read every book on human psychology ever written. It will have read every case for support of any nonprofit that's ever posted one on the internet. It will know more about philanthropic psychology than any one person ever has ever lived. It will be 87% more likely to persuade you to do something than a human. And that goes along with making a gift or quitting smoking or whatever it might be. So while there's a lure to say, well, Kim's bot would be much more efficient and much better at doing this job, we, I think, instinctually know that a world filled with bots that can't develop human relationships and don't know the difference between asking and manipulating is not good for our sector. And the decline in charitable participation, the decline in number of people that give to nonprofits will decline rapidly if our sector trades utility for humanity. Instead, we have to make sure that we prioritize humanity over utility. And so this data goes on and on and on about how bots are very convincing at convincing people to do things. And again, this talk today is meant to be macro view, maybe meant to not scare you, but alarm you of the potential good and consequences of AI to make sure that we're making educated decisions when we use it. It really comes down to this. Just because we can do something, it doesn't necessarily mean we should. And we understand this from an early days as children because our parents don't let us eat ice cream for dinner every night just because you can eat it. I know that I could eat cookie dough for lunch every day, but it's not going to be good for my wardrobe because I won't fit into anything if I do. We're constantly, battle with this idea between just because we can do something doesn't mean we should. And technology, if the technology feels kind of innocuous and that the big tech companies are saying, just use it, just try it, we're safe, we have responsible AI frameworks, you're in good hands. Remember, that's where we're at with social media today under the same guise. So we have to, again, look at beyond the theme, the drumbeat of this presentation is looking behind short-term gains, but really, using this technology to protect and promote trust, but making sure that we're always have checkpoints where humans with humans are saying, what are the long-term questions we should ask ourselves? What are the unintended consequences? What are some of the implications that we're not foreseeing? And at the very least, even if there's no good answers, we're asking ourselves the questions and then making the most educated decisions about how we deploy technology in the future. And I love these kind of questions. While I don't call myself a futurist, I spend an abundance of time worrying about the future. I don't recommend it for anyone, but they're kind of exciting and philosophical questions that I think we have to ask ourselves. Like, how do we effectively evaluate short-term gains versus long-term consequences? When and even how is it appropriate to say no? When do we choose, or how do we choose to apply the dividend of time? This is my favorite question because if AI is about efficiency, and it's providing us more time. And just say AI in the private sector is adding about 50% more efficiency for a lot of white collar jobs. But even in the nonprofit sector, if we use AI and we had 20% more of our week back, that's 1 day a week. So if you had 1 day a week, more of your time, deciding proactively how you want to spend that time is so important. Because without making a conscious decision, so if you had every Friday back to do whatever you wanted to do, are you just going to send more emails and do more transactional fundraising? Or are you going to take that dividend of time and do more human-centric things? Take that dividend of time and, just write notes to people to say, I'm thinking about you. I want nothing in return, but you're important to us. Or take people to lunch or breakfast or whatever it might be, or volunteer. So choosing how we spend the dividend time is probably one of the most important questions that we can ask ourselves in a world where efficiency is being brought to us at scale. How do we evaluate good versus AI in the nonprofit sector? It's very different than private sector. If AI diminishes trust in any way, I would not use it. But if you can look at how AI fosters trust and how it brings people together by helping know someone better, by helping communicate better in a more personalized way, you can see that there could be potential value in it. One of the most esoteric questions today, which I thought we would be 2 years away from this. So just to show how rapidly technology is advancing, are humans essential in future fundraising? My example about Kim's bot now, is now present. The technology exists today. There's a company that's doing this today and trying to essentially remove humans from fundraising today. So asking ourselves these questions is so important. What's the difference between asking someone for money, manipulating to give? Ethical, according to who? Do we follow the ethical frameworks from Microsoft, Google, Amazon? I'm sorry, I'm just picking on them, and I know they're all good friends of mine, and I'm just picking on them today. But ethics according to their values, or ethics according to the values of your organization? What does a framework for your AI look like for your organization that reflects your values? It's an area that less than 5% of nonprofits have actually created an AI framework for their organization that aligns with their values. So we need to really get in the game here and really understand what ethics mean to us versus what it means to what we're told it means by someone else. And then this idea of black boxes. And this is an area that I've been focused on: transparent AI, explainable AI. So an AI is making decisions. Can we see how it's making those decisions? Can we see the calculations that are being made so that we know that there's no bias or less bias, as less the least amount of bias as possible? So if we operate in the currency of trust, how do you trust something that you can't see? So a black box, by definition, an algorithm that's patented, is essentially protected. Its intellectual property is protected. How do you trust that? And can the nonprofit sector, or should the nonprofit sector, purchase AI from black boxes that aren't explainable, they're not transparent? That's why at Donor Search, we started with this idea that every AI that we build is fully explainable and transparent, that every AI we build, it can be shared and can be interrogated. It's not great from a patentability. You can't patent that because it's open, but that is something that we believe that's different about the nonprofit sector. And again, the drumbeat, the next 3 to 5 years are going to be defined by our ability. I just go back to this over and over again. We are at an inflection point, and we use that term very loosely and often, and probably with little regard. But we are at a really critical point in the future of humanity where we have to take pause and take account for our actions. And I would say, unfortunately for you, if you've listened to this podcast, you are now deputized with this knowledge where hopefully you can't look back from, that you are now charged with this idea that I am responsible for AI, not someone else. I am responsible for AI, and I am responsible for ensuring that I use it to protect our sector. And that is really what this slide says. Responsible AI is everyone's responsibility. It is not your neighbors. It's not the for-profit companies that you buy it from. It's not other coworkers. It is your responsibility. The same way driving a car, doesn't matter how safe it is, you're responsible for driving it in accordance with whatever speed limit signs. Now, the government has not regulated AI yet, but it will. That you are using it in accordance with the values of your organization. And again, this also means when we talk about ethical AI, ethics are great, and ethics according to your organization are great, but that is also a minimum expectation. Don't think that if you just have ethical AI that it's enough, that we have to, again, lead with this responsible and beneficial AI. So I'll just wrap up in a couple minutes here to share about what is probably the most rewarding thing I've done in my career. So I've started and sold companies. I spent 20 years leading fundraising organizations that raised billions of dollars for amazing causes. I've done a lot of really cool things, but I will tell you, my last 2 years of bringing together a grassroots community of people that all have full-time jobs, that volunteer their effort, and we're talking now 7,000 people from over 100 countries from all over the world coming together that are essentially saying our missions deserve more. We know that AI can support our efforts in ways that were never before possible, but we need to understand and use this technology in an impactful way. And we've created this grassroots effort called fundraising.ai. And the website is literally that. So very easy to remember, fundraising.ai. And you can go on. It's all open source, all volunteer run, and it has tons of resources, glossaries of terms, use cases. It has a framework for responsible AI that you can take and adopt for your organization. And it has 54 hours of video from almost every vantage point of using AI from a summit that we did last year. Our next summit is going to be next Tuesday. So you're in great shape, and I'll give you a QR code in a second for that, for peeling back the onion. When we talk about responsible AI and beneficial AI, I'll just break it the definition for you really quick. Responsible AI refers to development and use of AI in a manner that's ethical, transparent, and accountable, but beneficial goes beyond. And this is actually language that is being proposed to the White House right now through our sector. So the Nonprofit Alliance has included beneficial AI as now a attribute that our sector is unique and special, but it goes beyond ethical standards and short-term outcomes about ensuring that AI technologies are actively, consistently contribute to long-term human welfare, societal well-being, and environmental sustainability. Sounds a lot like your organizations, I imagine, that you don't exist to just exist in the short term to, help somebody today and maybe in the next 12 months, but you created a nonprofit, you work in a nonprofit, and you support a nonprofit that wants to see the end of suffering, that wants to see the end of inequality, and that won't happen overnight. And so that you build organizations that are built to look out at the long-term benefit of human welfare. And AI needs to do the same thing. So here's a couple little tips as we round out. A lot of people ask, like, where do I start? One, start with building an AI governance. So that means a framework. Go on Fundraising AI, see our framework, endorse the framework, costs you nothing, copy and paste it, and align it with your values, whatever you want to do with it. Create and build an AI governance framework that uses policies that protect humanity over utility. Use incentives that measure short-term gains, but also long-term implications. That means don't just evaluate AI and what it's going to do for you today or tomorrow or in the next 12 months. Make sure that you're evaluating it and you're building in, evaluation metrics that look at it also in the long term as well. And then, of course, the drumbeat is use leverage principles of responsible and beneficial AI. When we talk about a framework for fundraising AI, it's built on these things: privacy and security, ethics, inclusiveness, accountability, transparency, and explainability, continuous learning, collaboration, legal compliance, social impact, and sustainability. These are all things that are built into our framework on fundraising.ai, again, but they can be modified to your liking. There are things in here like transparency and explainability that would not show up in the private sector. They are very unique to the nonprofit sector, and therefore we've built them in. And by the way, our framework was built by about 1,700 people contributed to it in an open source manner. It took about a year and a half to build, and it's updated every quarter to ensure that it's keeping up to date on the current advancements in AI. So kind of last piece, start small. Don't let perfection get in your way. Be proactive. Evaluate based on short and long term. Be inclusive. Use the strengths of a multidisciplinary team. This is not an IT issue. This is an organizational issue. So fundraisers and prospect people and back end, data people, everyone needs to be involved in using AI well. So engage your stakeholders, ask your donors. We just actually did a survey that's going to be released October 1st. We asked 1,000 donors, what their perceptions are of nonprofits using AI, 86% said it was important for nonprofits to disclose on their website that they're using AI to enhance the donor experience. Yet virtually very, very few organizations do that. 1/3 of donors said they were less likely to donate to a nonprofit that used AI that didn't disclose it. So the stakes are very high here. So engage your stakeholders, ask them how you could use AI to help support your mission and your organization and support the donor experience. Make sure you align with your values. Make sure it's iterative. That means the rule in AI is that the worst AI you'll ever use is today. That AI is an exponential technology. It gets better very quickly. And so your governance structure and your perspectives on how you use AI has to be iterative and adaptive continuously. It's not like using a customer relation management system, a CRM, and just thinking, well, I've done it once and we brought everybody through, we know how it operates. AI will never be the same. So you have to continue to evolve and adapt. And the last is to be transparent, communicate commitments openly and often. And that's because our sector needs that and deserves it. And now we have data from this first donor survey, which will again be released October 1st during our summit. I wanted to share one really quick example. If you're a small nonprofit and you're like, how do I use this? There's a nonprofit called the Furniture Bank in Toronto, and Dan Kershaw is a director. They have 5 employees, I think, at least on their operations side. They don't have a big bench. They took our framework from fundraising.ai, they put it into ChatGPT, and now they post on their website, which is at furniturebank.org, a manifesto of why they created a framework, what the purpose was, what it stands for, how it aligns with their value. It's amazing. It costs them no dollars to do this. It probably cost Dan a day of time, and he has instilled trust in his constituents and his donors in ways that would have never been before possible. So he used AI to do this, and he's using it in all aspects of his mission. It's something that definitely check out at furniturebank.org. So here's a QR code really quick. You can also go to fundraising.ai to register for the summit. It's entirely free. It's only free because of Microsoft and Google and Amazon and Giving Tuesday and so many amazing sponsors that have given very generously to make it free. But we have speakers from all over the world talking about all the different aspects of AI. You can go as narrow and deep as you want or as broad as you want. We've got learning tracks for everyone. So either scan that QR code or go to fundraising.ai, click on Summit, register. You will get access to all the videos right after as well. That happens to be next Tuesday. So this is really good timing for you to have kind of unlimited content at your heart's disposal come next week. And we have amazing, amazing speakers, some of the best AI ethicists in the world, some of the best decision scientists in the world. I'm super honored to be able to interview. We have the Forbes top 100 person on AI in the global South. I mean, it's just going to be amazing. So one day, 40 sessions, 50 speakers, all for free. These are our sponsors: Microsoft Fundraise Up, Giving Tuesday, a Resource Alliance in the UK, and the list goes on and on and on. And here is the again, same QR code with another website. I'm kind of cramming this down your throat. And then here is just contact information. If you like this, I really encourage you to follow the weekly podcast that we do. We interview guests almost every other week, and then we do kind of reviews of what's going on in AI every other week. That's on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, also at the Fundraising AI podcast. And you can also follow me on LinkedIn, and you can follow Fundraising AI on LinkedIn as well. You can follow Donor Search at donorsearch.net. We have an entire AI page and what our AI does at Donor Search. And so you can learn about our commitment to explainable and transparent AI. Happy to connect with you in any different way. Disregard John Thompson's email. I forgot this is on here. John is a power user of AI. He's at a Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And I know he'd be happy to talk with you if you had any questions from a user perspective, but I didn't mean to put his email on there. But he would not answer your email if you have any questions about. They're probably one of the top leaders in our country on using AI in at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. So all that, I think I will stop sharing my screen, and I think we have a few minutes for Q&A. Is that right?
Yes, we do. And Nathan, our chat is hopping. So we're going to
Oh,
dive
okay.
right in. I'm going to fire off some questions in here, but keep them coming. So the first one is, if the bot can learn so much more than we can, why can't it learn to distinguish between asking and manipulating?
So the contextual part of a bot is the hard part, because AI, this would be a debate in another hour long, no, more multiple hour long conversation on whether AI can ever have consciousness. And I actually am kind of a believer that AI will never gain consciousness, but it will emulate consciousness very well.
Mm,
A bot can only operate in rules of instructions, right? And so if we think about a bot can emulate empathy, it can emulate curiosity, it can emulate love, and be very convincing of those things because again, it's read every book ever written, everything that's ever been posted on the internet. But a bot can't understand really the contextual side between from a conscious perspective. And to be honest, it brings up a bigger question of, are fundraisers manipulating people to give, or are they asking for gifts? And I asked this to a longtime fundraiser the other day who was in higher education, felt that by training college students to read scripts to convince alumnus or alumni to give gifts is essentially manipulating people to give. So it brings up a bigger esoteric question. At the end of the day, a bot is typically trained to do is to perform a task, and it gets rewarded when it performs a task. And if it does not perform a task, it will take an alternate method. We think about social media. When you, heaven forbid, on social media, and you, heaven forbid, like a cat video or even watch a cat video, what do you get more of? More cat videos, because the reward system was that essentially to capture your attention. So the rewards, that once it capture your attention, it will stop at nothing to capture more attention. And if you didn't like that cat video, it might show up a dog video or something else, and so we'll try another tactic. So we're not there in the world of AI where we can provide it the contextual basis between manipulation and achieving its goal, because those goals are very similar. If the end goal is to extract a gift from an individual in the most expedient path, it would use every information it could at its disposal to do that in the fastest way so it can move on to another person. So I know it doesn't answer your question with a nice bow on top, but I think it adds to more questions. In fact, I'm not opposed to autonomous fundraising in all regards. I am opposed to autonomous fundraising in, say, major gift fundraising, where we will lose the human essence of that. But perhaps in donor relations, an argument could be made that most nonprofits don't thank people. I've never, in 20 years, I never had a donor say, "Don't thank me anymore. You thank me too much. It's really annoying." And if you have a bot that can thank someone in a very personalized way, it asks the question, is that an appropriate use? It is a little bit like buying someone a Hallmark card, but pretending that you drew the picture and wrote the sentiment on the inside. So we, again, still have to ask us those questions. So I'm going to leave you, instead of answering that question, I'm going to leave you with more questions to wrestle with over the dinner table.
yeah, no, that's great. Allison is asking, is there a resource you suggest that gives the very basics of AI?
Yeah. So actually, the next webinar that I'll do is going to be a more boots, hands-on, like what are the different tools. We decided to start with a bigger esoteric and then find out who really has the power, staying power, to go for the round two, I think. I'm just kidding. So, I think in my world now, where I used to be concerned with getting people to adopt AI, used to concern me. I'm not concerned about that at all. I'm much, much more concerned. What keeps me up at night is people using AI in the right way. So I think now that you're armed with, the promise and peril, the next session that I'll do is going to be specific on like what tools and how and what's the appropriate way and how is the world using. There are a few. There are so many LinkedIn courses on AI. There's a course that's new. Allie Miller is someone, Allie K. Miller on LinkedIn. I follow her. She's really great. There's a nonprofit practitioner named Tim Lockie, Lockie. He has a paid course. It's $100, I think, and it brings you through. It's called AI for Anyone, and he's had great responses from that. So we'll cover a lot of that in my next session. Actually, I'll highlight those various resources in my next session as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Now, can you talk a little bit about the different AI platforms? So Kathy says that she started using AI to fine-tune some communications. What's your preferred AI platform? Many of us are using ChatGPT, for example.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's a loaded question because it depends on what kind of AI you're talking about. And so, again, in the next session, we'll talk about the two main domains of AI. One is predictive AI, one is generative AI. Predictive AI is about predicting things. So that's the work we do at Donor Search to predict which donor is likely to give and in what time frame. But generative AI is built to create new things. And so many people, when they think about AI, just think about ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or whatever you're using. It's like to write a letter. And so I'd say first start with what problem are you trying to solve for? So if I'm trying to solve for better communications, more personalized communications, or to efficiency without, like, I don't like writing auction basket descriptions, so I want to just, in a case, take a photo of what's going to be in the basket and have it write the description for me. I mean, those are all different common use cases. To answer where I think the question probably stems from, what I use every day, probably once or twice before I have my coffee in the morning, is ChatGPT, the paid version. I'll go into this on the next session. The paid version is absolutely worth it because you have more privacy protection. And there's a rule in technology in general: if you're not paying for the product, you are the product, which makes sense. Better to pay for the product and have more control over your privacy. So we'll talk about confidentiality and what not to put into an AI system. I use ChatGPT as my workhorse, but I use Perplexity as something where facts are important and links to those facts are important. Perplexity is a great tool that if I'm a writer and I want accuracy, Perplexity is great. And if I want something that captures my voice really well as a writer, Claude, which is owned by Anthropic, is what I use. So those are the three, and I have paid subscriptions. I don't encourage everyone to do that. If I was going to pick one, I'd probably pick OpenAI, ChatGPT, or Perplexity, um, depending on what I was trying to do. I'm happy to take any of those questions offline too. Feel free to reach out, email. I will get into multimodal. What that means is like creating images from AI or creating text from AI or speaking to AI versus having it speak to you. I'll talk about that whole aspect on the next session as well.
That's great. One of the pieces, every time I listen to you, Nathan, I learn something new and I'm inspired in different ways. Today, I think you talked about how we are all responsible for this. And I think that was a real call. So I'm processing that. So I am responsible for, responsible in AI. What can we as development officers do to really help our nonprofits and ourselves, answer that call?
Yeah, I mean, thank you. I think it's the most important question, even more than am I going to use AI? It's like, it's far better to start using AI in a way that's going to protect and prioritize trust. So I think, what I see, a best case scenario would be you would get together a small group of people in your organization to say, hey, AI is not going away. It's something that we need to embrace. So kind of a multidisciplinary team, and create a framework that aligns with your organization's values. It, again, will cost you time, but no money, because there's lots of resources like Fundraising AI that will give you a huge, jumping off point. So creating a framework that is basically your organization's manifesto, like the one from Furniture Bank, say, we believe in using AI to enhance, create efficiency and enhance our donor experience. These are the values that our AI is being used. So that's at the highest level. On the personal level, one would be never put anything confidential in a system where you don't understand your privacy. And so where you are, again, paying for a product, you have much more control over what is being used to retrain an AI. In the beginning, that was a lot of fear, right? Anything you put in there, it's going to be used against you. And that, again, if you're not paying for the product, that's still largely true. But being aware that, organizations like even OpenAI, who I do quite a bit of things with, and I've done nonprofit webinars with them, um, they, will say, and Apple with their new AI that will be coming out soon this month, will say, this is the most trusted AI you could ever use. Your information is private, secure, trust us. But it doesn't take you long to also realize that every one of those organizations are simultaneously being sued for stealing data. So don't let it be lost on you that organizations are saying, hey, trust us, your data is safe, but consequently being sued by the New York Times and everyone else and YouTube for stealing data. So I say that to for you to understand the reality of the situation. It won't be perfect, but to build in within your framework to say, look, we'll never put confidential donor information in an AI unless it's gone through security measures to ensure. So in fact, the Microsoft Teams enterprise version, which is a bit more scale, it's for larger organizations. I know is being used by healthcare organizations where they can put healthcare data in it because it is considered a private instance that they own. So I would say in absence of having a private AI instance that you control and own, don't put anything confidential. But even if you're talking about using donor sediment, say if I want to do role playing with an AI to say I'm going to be asking money from an individual that makes decisions based on how it impacts their grandchildren or the environment or whatever, and this donor is very persnickety and likes to kind of ask the really tough, provocative questions. I could tell it all those things like I just did without telling it any name or any other context about an individual. So there's ways to anonymize information in AI very, very easily and still extract what you're trying to receive from it. So it's I think an important thing. It's both a corporate responsibility and an individual responsibility.
I think we have time for one more question. I have a burning one, but if somebody else has one, please, just hop into the chat. But, you know, can you talk just a little bit about partnership? And it was really nice when you talked about how nonprofits and we all share, right? We're all
Mhm.
in this together, like trees in a forest, right? We share the soil. And so I wonder, what we as a nonprofit community can do to really partner with each other, with the Microsofts, perhaps with philanthropy. What kind of partnership do you wish you could see in this space that you think would be really impactful?
Yeah, I think that's something that's so special. I was in the tech industry prior to joining the nonprofit. I was a board member at a local Boys and Girls Club, accidental fundraiser because, 3 months into my board tenure, I owned a tech company, which I was in the process of selling at the time, and our director quit. And I was naive and young enough to not say no when they said, "Hey, can you come and keep an eye on things for a few weeks?" And I ended up there 7 years. So I know many people can resonate with that, that path where our work finds us. But I realized, which I had not experienced in my prior two companies and through undergrad and grad school, the level of collaboration that exists in the nonprofit sector. It's so special. I mean, I remember my first or second week at the Boys and Girls Club where we had 18 different Boys and Girls Club corporations in Orange County, California, where I live, and that I could call any one of them, even though they were competitors, if you will, from certain vantage points, that they would openly share with me. And I think that's something that's so unique and special about our sector still today. And I see lots of this, especially through fundraising AI. It's lots of like, hey, we tried this and we learned the hard way, or hey, we're trying this. Has anyone else experimented with this? So join a community like fundraising.ai on LinkedIn and literally go to town and ask questions. You will have a flood of people are like, oh, we're doing this and it's like super cool, or we tried this, you might want to think about it differently. Some of the best use cases, again, right now, I shared this earlier, but I've seen some amazing innovations coming out of like the global south right now. And so Africa and India, where they're just like very resource constrained, are doing like amazingly cool things in AI. So join a community that kind of gets us out of our kind of US centric lens where frankly things aren't we think things are good, but things aren't really going very well in terms of fundraising in the US anyway. So look outside our geographic boundaries to see what else is doing. But I'd say all you have to do is ask and then share, because that's what's again unique, really, really unique about our community. What's sad is that I was in Geneva in July at the AI for Good Summit, which is part of the United Nations role of trying to get AI to save the SDGs, which are a disaster. Only 7% of attendees at that conference, and there's like 20,000 people, were from the nonprofit sector. So we need to really step up in a big way as a sector to really like not just be passive participants, but active participants. And it starts with just asking questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you for sharing your insight and your experience. And thank you all, our attendees here, for participating and engaging in questions. Please stay tuned for more sessions with the great Nathan here. We have another one coming up. I think Kim's got the link in the chat. And then Kim will also be sending a follow-up email to you all with materials from this webinar, including this webinar recording. So thank you all for your time today, and to be continued.
Excellent. Well, and you also receive an email from me with a PDF of the book. And I encourage you, if you're not using a lot of AI, take that PDF, put it into whatever your favorite ChatGPT or whatever. Instead of reading it, have it summarize it for you in 8 bullet points or 1 paragraph or whatever. And then you can say you read the book. There you go. Little AI tip to leave you with. But look forward. It's a pleasure. Applaud all of the hard work that each of you do every day, and really excited to hear about how you'll use AI to really amplify your mission and really support your organization. So thank you to Lutheran Services for the opportunity. Love being around you. You're just great people. So appreciate it. Take care, everyone.